And what is going on, everyone? Welcome on into the Check Your Brain podcast. My name is Tony Mazur. If you are interested in my free episodes, they go out every Wednesday on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. If you're watching the video right now, that is my Apple Podcast link. I could show Spotify, but Spotify is kind of strange with my podcast doesn't always post everything. Apple does. Plus, I have an iPhone and it's easier enough. I could just scroll through it. So go find me for on the free podcast over on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all the other podcatchers, as well as Rumble, YouTube, and Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it. And if you want more content from me, go over to Patreon at patreon.com/Tony Mazur, TonyMazur. You can subscribe for free, but I'm not going to give you a lot of free content other than the podcast you are listening to right now. The rest of it, the good stuff, is behind a paywall for as little as $3 and as much as $10. Again, that's patreon.com/Tony Mazur. Enough about me. Let's get to my guest here, and let's go over to his website, and it's Pastor Jackson Lahmeyer. And I've seen this guy over on, I think, Newsmax and all the other channels and everything. And it's a real pleasure to have him on as we talk about something that's the most important time that we have in this country that we are dealing with, not just this country, our society, our civilization. And that's the return to maybe more of a pushing away of modernity and a return to some kind of originality, some normalcy. And if you are a Christian, there's a lot of people, especially considering what occurred almost 2 months ago in Utah with Charlie Kirk, that a lot of people are re-entering the church. And whether it's Protestant church, Orthodox, or Catholic Church, and I'm Catholic, so I like to go to a more traditional mass, but I'm not faulting the people who are going to some of the Novus Ordo masses. But it's a pleasure to have a pastor here on this podcast, somebody who's a little bit more intelligent when it comes to religious matters, especially when it comes to Christianity. Jackson, good to have you on here.
Hey, man, thanks for having me on. Love all that you're doing. And, I think you're so right. There is a pendulum shift that has happened in our country of rejecting what you labeled as modernity, which, that has been culturally labeled as wokeism, DEI, all those type of things, which is primarily a rejection of God and the things of God. And so there is a return. We always say, make America great again, right? Well, you got to find out what made America great in the first place.
Yeah.
And America was great because it was a godly nation built upon Christian values and principles. And so we're returning to that. It's exciting.
Well, I noticed this so I'm 37, so I'm considered a millennial. And going to school back in the mid 2000s, there was a real push with these, what they called the new atheists. So you had Sam Harris, Richard Dawkins, Christopher Hitchens, and basically right around 9/11, it was, well, God wouldn't allow something like this to happen. 3,000 people dead. If God existed, he would have willed the planes to all this other
Yeah.
really upper crust, coastal elite nonsense that I was hearing. And I've noticed in recent years there's a little bit of a tonal shift from not just those individuals, and Sam Harris also lost his mind, but a lot of people rejecting this modernity of, I don't need to go to church. I can just worship crystals. I could use tarot cards. I'm an astrologist. No, I'm not religious. I'm spiritual. And I'm noticing a little bit of that shift in the last couple of years. Have you?
Yeah, because none of that stuff works. We tried it. It didn't end well. Our society became chaotic. It still is chaotic, and which is why I think there is that pendulum shift. The statistics are pretty incredible right now, actually. Year to date, Bible sales are up 40% in the United States of America. Christian music downloads on Spotify are up 50% right now. And the one that really gets me is Christian apps, different apps that you can download are up 80% right now. And that's being driven primarily by the younger generation, right? Which was supposed to be a lost generation. That's what all of the experts said. This generation would be totally one that was against God, going to church. And boy, were the experts completely wrong. Young men are outpacing young women back to church. And so, yeah, I think it's, as a society, we tried the modernity and postmodernism and all that kind of stuff, and it blew up in our faces. We couldn't distinguish between a male and a female.
Oh,
You think
yeah.
about how far we went down. We did not evolve. We had de-evolution. We regressed, not progressed as a society. And so it didn't work. And people are looking for truth.
they're looking for something. They're looking for meaning, and they're not getting it from Hollywood movies, from Marvel and Star Wars. They're not getting it from Harry Potter, even if, J.K. Rowling has changed a little bit and you're finding the meaning of Harry Potter but you're not getting it from literature like you're getting it from something. And people are waking up to, gosh, this religion thing has lasted quite a long time. And Hollywood has been around for 100 years. And Hollywood has already collapsed with the rise of AI and
Yeah.
no new ideas. And people are returning to some kind of normalcy. But I think that's just one aspect of rejecting what we've seen in modernity.
Yeah.
And because it's going to take a little bit. You mentioned how younger generations. Now, I'm a millennial, meaning we are now at middle age. We are now near 40.
Wild. I'm a
Yeah,
millennial too, man. I can't believe it.
and that's strange. Yeah,
I got,
and
I got a
but
daughter turning 16 next week. That's not supposed to be the case.
no, not at all. But you did it properly in a lot of ways. But there are a lot of people in my generation. They're nearing 40 and realizing that we were lied to. We were lied to about what this American dream was supposed to be. That we had to go to college, and then you graduate college. You say, "Well, I don't know what to go for. I go to grad school." All of a sudden, you're not starting your life until you're 30
Yeah.
something. I need to find myself. I can't settle down. I don't have money. I can't find the right woman. I'm on the dating apps. I'm on this and that. And you're noticing people are waking up and they're 40. They have no prospects. Their job is probably on its way out if it's already out by automation at this point. And they're wondering what's going on. We feel rudderless in society. And I think that's where a lot of people are saying maybe I shouldn't have gotten my morals from watching Sex in the City back in the day, and maybe I should have listened to my parents and gone to church.
Yeah.
Or here's the other one: is marrying my college girlfriend or college boyfriend. And it just seems the people in my generation were led astray. And why I think your mission is very important for the Gen Z and even Gen Alpha to say, you see the millennials, you see how miserable they are on their SSRIs and they're not happy and they're 42 and childless and going to Disney World. Yeah, don't be like them. There's a better way and we will show you.
Well, I'll tell you the group that got deceived the worst was millennial women. I have so many friends that wake up, they're 40 years old, and they pursued the, boss life of building
Girl
your
boss.
career. Yeah. And build your career. And then you come to find out your career doesn't satisfy. You're 40, 42 years old, and you don't have a child. You're not married. And they're miserable. They're miserable. They got lied to. They got deceived, which is why I think it's so important to communicate to this next generation. There's nothing wrong with being a wife and a mom. In fact, I wouldn't say there's just nothing wrong with it. That's one of the probably greatest things any woman could achieve, to be a wife and to be a mom. And those millennial women got deceived with feminism and, I mean, just the whole thing. And it's so sad because, now they're 40, 42, 45 years old, and the career that they thought would fulfill them has just kind of like left them high and dry. And so to the younger women out there, one of the greatest accomplishments you could ever achieve is to find a man that loves you and that you love him, and you build a beautiful family together. That's the American dream.
We've seen this. It's been a year since the presidential election. Donald Trump wins the non-consecutive second term, and the demographics were showing that young Zoomer men between 18 and 30 were, by and large, going for Donald Trump. That swung from Democrats in 16 and 20 all the way to Republican in 24. However, there's a real problem because women of that same demographic of 18 to 30 are getting more liberal.
Yeah.
And the problem is because it's a much different from maybe when you and I were growing up and even older, that you can have dad's a Republican, mom's a Democrat, but they made it work. They put their
Sure.
problems aside. The difference is, though, it's not politics, it's values. And if you're a young trad Chad who's a Trump supporter, wears a Gulf of America hat like I am, and then you're in the dating market and you're trying to find a good woman, and all the women are nose piercings, chest tattoos, my body, my choice, it's real hard to try to find that common ground of what principles am I going to compromise just so I can find a good woman.
Yeah.
And that's why you're seeing the rise of the incel. You're seeing the rise of just a lot of rhetoric and a lot of infighting in that Zoomer demographic right now. So I guess what do you see from your angle of being a pastor and reaching out to young families and young people who are looking for some advice?
Yeah, that's tough, isn't it? I am so glad that I am not on the dating scene in today's world. I am so glad that I am married with kids because it is a different animal today than what it was, say, whenever we were younger. So I can't even imagine trying to navigate through the waters that are there today. But I think to your point, it's so important for young men. Don't lower your standards because your life and your success will be highly dependent upon the person you choose to do life with, your spouse. You marry the right woman, you will have a tremendous life. You marry the wrong woman, the Bible says it's better to live in an attic all by yourself than to be married to the wrong woman. And so you never want to lower, this is to the guys out there, never lower your standards, never lower your standards. To the women out there, don't lower your standards either, but bring your standards. Listen, like attracts like. You hear a lot of women say, I only attract toxic men. Well, that's probably because you're a toxic woman. Like attracts like. And so, listen, here's the thing. We're always searching for the one, trying to find the one. What I've discovered as a pastor, instead of trying to find the one, become the one, and like will naturally attract like. There's a magnetic pull. The New Agers call it we vibe well together. There is this pull of like-mindedness, and so instead of being consumed with finding, the right one, become the right one and put yourself in an environment where the right person would be there, like church. I always encourage people. The best place to find your spouse is at a church. And
Yeah.
I love it at our church. I'm marrying young couples left and right. I love it. And so, but don't lower your standards because it could be the biggest mistake of your life.
I can't speak for women, of course, because I identify as a man. My pronouns,
Me
anyways, I'm
too.
just kidding. But as far as young men, it's very tough now because you do, again, have a lot more guys who are leaning towards tradition. However, they have been raised in a digital age with these little smartphones next to us all the time and tablets. And I think of someone who's 20, who's in college, does not remember a time before YouTube, before social media, before, I mean, heck, Netflix was around, and then everything from TikTok and Instagram. Uh, and then the availability of gambling and pornography. And these are vices that have been around since ancient times that we've discussed. However, that availability basically 2 clicks away from
Yeah.
pornography is horrible, and it's ruining marriages. I'm sure you've seen it all the time where a lot of marriages have split because of pornography. But young men who have, I don't want to say been raised with it, but it's been in their lives in one way, shape, or form. Well, it could be a Instagram or TikTok reel of a girl dancing in a bikini, all the way to something a little bit more hardcore, and it's causing some kind of shift in men's brains. I want to get to gambling in a second, but I want to talk about pornography first, about how bad it's been for younger generations, and tack on that with a global quote unquote pandemic a couple of years ago where they were stuck in their homes for 2 years and couldn't associate. So you're seeing this loneliness incel epidemic happening, and it's tough to get some guys off the computer to
Yeah.
meet a girl who may be a five when he can talk to tens all day on OnlyFans or something.
Yeah, I know. What a terrible situation. It's interesting. We bring up these right here, our smartphones. And these were meant to serve us. That's the selling point. That's the advertisement. This will make your life easier, your life more convenient. You have everything you need within arm's distance. And the servant has become the master. This no longer serves me, I serve it. I no longer am the master over this. This is my master, and this is for most people. And so, especially a generation like, when I was growing up, I didn't have a smartphone. I got a phone, I think when I was like 15 years, and it wasn't an iPhone. It was, you remember the Razor? You remember
Oh
it? You
yeah.
remember back in oh yeah, the shiny Razor. It was cool for its time, but it didn't have the abilities to do this. And so now, to your point, pornography, gambling, they've always been around. They've always been accessible, but not accessible to 9-year-olds, not accessible to 12-year-olds at any time of the day. And so it's a new challenge for parents and social media. Oh my gosh, because what algorithms do is they find out what you will stay engaged with. And most of the time, human nature, we like rage. That's why you see violence, and you're feeding your mind this. If you're a young male, you obviously have an attraction to beautiful women. So you can constantly be fed, like you said, women in bikinis or whatever it may be. And so there's a real challenge there. And as a society, there has to come a time maybe when parents, and this is, it's on parents, of having a forced detox because it's a drug. Pornography is a drug. It literally is a drug. It's an addiction. And the further you go down it, the more hardcore you have to go. You start in drugs with marijuana, you end up on meth. How does that happen? You have to intensify the feeling and the hit. You start out with Instagram models, and you find yourself into some of the weirdest sexual deprivation you can even imagine, because you have to continually escalate. So, as a society, and although I know this is wishful thinking, the best thing that could probably happen to us is for like the internet to go out for a week. We'd have a forced detox, a forced fast. Most of us wouldn't know what to do, but this is a real issue. And if you're a young man and you're in bondage and you're trapped within the vicious cycle of pornography or gambling, the best thing you can do is be honest about it and get real help. Because if you don't get help, you'll never heal.
It's it's truly amazing because again, you mentioned that we weren't raised with smartphones. We didn't have them until we were. I think I had my first smartphone at 22, so it's been around for several years for me. But I do remember a time where you went outside and, as the kids call it, touch grass. Well, kids aren't touching enough grass. Maybe
Right.
some are. Some are trying to find that tradition, and it just there's a lot of these factors that have been really preying on people in that dopamine rush. I have a friend of mine who's a teacher, and he told me that because I've been tough on teachers. There's whether it's the amount of days off they'll get during the summer, and then some of the curriculum that we saw, especially during the COVID times,
Oh yeah.
and the flags in the class and everything. But he's like, he said something that I just maybe because I'm outside of that business didn't realize what it's like to be a teacher, and that these kids have to put their phones and their tablets away, and they're having meltdowns in class because they're not getting the constant dopamine drip
They're
from
literally
having,
having withdrawals, and
yeah,
the
they're
teacher
having
gets the
withdrawals
hand
in
flip.
class.
Yeah. Yeah,
I,
it's a terrible thing. I mean, they're literally just like a drug addict. Whenever they are no longer taking, they have physical withdrawals, and our phones, pornography, gambling, everything has become a drug. And I can't imagine being a teacher. I cannot imagine it.
So we'll slightly move on from to a different but semi-related topic here. So I mentioned Charlie Kirk at the beginning of the podcast, September 10th in Utah, and we all saw it. Unfortunately, I saw it several times, several different angles, because it showed me what we're dealing with right now, that we're dealing with a society of demons, a society that, even though, again, some people are turning back to the church or turning to the church for the first time and trying to right some wrongs about their lives, there's a lot of others who are continuing a secular, pagan, demon worshiping life that's it's not good. And we're seeing this rise in political violence. It's not coming from, I don't care what anyone says about, oh, but what about January 6th? No, the political violence we see is happening. It's a continued pattern that we saw in the late 60s, early 70s of leftist political violence. and this is what we're kind of dealing with now, is it's not so much we're having debate club anymore. That Charlie Kirk was the moderate. He was the guy that you can come up there and have a leftist with a nose ring and tattoos and speak to a trad guy about this, that whatever podcast and Jubilee and all these other kind of slop shows, in my opinion. But there's a lot of that where you have a moderate who can moderate a debate. And when one side, especially younger generations, feel it's justified to murder people like Elon Musk or Donald Trump
Yeah.
through political violence, I don't see how we're going to find any common ground with these people anymore. Do you?
Well, that's the call, right? We need unity, and the problem is you cannot unite with evil. That's a problem. We have irreconcilable value systems. When you celebrate the death of first of all, he wasn't the president of the United States. He wasn't even an elected official. He was a young married man with two children leading an organization where he simply would have discussions and debates. And when you celebrate his death, you are the problem. He was not the problem. You are the problem. And you cannot unite with evil. That is, you hear all of our politicians, right? What is the call? We need to unite together. Well, hold on a second. What does unity mean to you? Because what I believe it means to you is I'm to compromise who we are and I am to lower our standards to come together with you because we don't do that. We're not the ones firing bullets, literal bullets at people we disagree with. We're firing words and
Pocket
arguments,
constitutions.
yeah, and debates. But you listen, and you cannot unite with evil because if you unite with evil, you are not influencing it; it is infecting you. And so that doesn't mean that we hate people that disagree with us. But what that simply means is we don't lower our standards because they exposed themselves with the Charlie Kirk assassination.
I did a podcast a couple of weeks ago about times where I felt radicalized, or as we call it now, red pill.
Yeah.
And I've had a couple of those moments, but I think after Charlie Kirk, it really picked up something that continued from COVID. So 5.5 years ago, we're stuck in our homes, and I worked in radio at the time, and I remembered asking my or brought up a topic because my station, of course, being very liberal and saying that we should lock yourselves down, wear a mask when you get your mail, make sure you toast it, and all this other crazy nonsense that was going on. And I brought up the fact that, hey, what about restaurant workers? What about the service industry? What about these? And they're like, it doesn't matter. It's a global pandemic. You want grandma to die. And I realized, whoa, these are people that would call the cops on me if I had a family party. And
Yes.
I got married in 20 June of 2020, and there were people in my wedding party who were afraid that cops were going to be called, not for noise complaints, but because we were standing too close together during a deadly global pandemic. And I'm like, whoa, these people would actually, friends of mine, coworkers would call the cops. And then after Charlie Kirk died, and I'm seeing again friends of mine, coworkers, family members say he was a Nazi and the only good Nazi is a dead Nazi, or and they taking quotes out of context. And I realized I have to really cut ties with a lot of people. These are people that if they thought Charlie Kirk was a Nazi, and if they heard my podcast, do you think my friends, people who were in my wedding, at my wedding or whatever, would feel the same way if something, God forbid, would happen to me? And they probably would say, "Yeah, he had some terrible things, whatever." Well, I'm not gonna waste my time. I'm not gonna cry over somebody who had terrible things to say. Again, in their mind, and it was the realization that it's not the elites that hate us, hate Christians, hate Christendom in general. It's even people who live next door to us. And
Yeah.
that really, really woke me up and rejiggered something in my mind.
Well, it's wild to think about it, isn't it? That, you had neighbors reporting neighbors for having family over for Thanksgiving. I mean, like, what? That actually happened. And now, if you believe someone is a Nazi, well, then why wouldn't you celebrate their death? If you believe that Charlie Kirk is literally a Hitler in the making, well, wouldn't you agree? The best thing you could do is take Hitler out before he ever becomes powerful. And so that narrative that rhetoric, it really is deadly, because if you truly believe Charlie Kirk, Donald Trump, any of us are Nazis, well, there would be a just cause for ending our lives because of the ramifications of what Nazis do. And the sad part is, so you have the media elites, they throw that rhetoric out. They don't believe it. It's the people who are unstable. They take that rhetoric and they actually believe it, and then they act on it. And that's the tragedy of the Charlie Kirk assassination.
Yeah, the fact that we're dealing with it, because again, like you said, it's not even people, these demonic figures you would see on TikTok, or Hassan Piker or Destiny, and these people
Yeah.
really should be deplatformed. But it was people that I went to school with who were saying, "Good, I don't care. I never heard of them until yesterday. Why do I care? Not a big deal to me." And to be so cavalier, so
Yep.
nonchalant about political violence, which means that we're going to see more of this. So, what do you see? Not to put a prediction hat, but we do have a midterm election coming up in a year. We have the presidential election 28 in 3 years. Does this continue to escalate? And if it does, what can we do other than, of course, praying and returning to church and reading scripture? What can we do to try to tamp this down?
Yeah, so I think there definitely will be escalation. I cannot foresee, once you cross the Rubicon, you have to continue to move forward. They have crossed that line. And so, yeah, I think there will be escalation. Unfortunately, you don't wish this, but they have shown the links that they will go. And so, yes, there will be escalation. So, what do we do in the midst of it? I think we have to recognize the history of the church is quite interesting. Whenever the church is not under any type of persecution, she's usually stagnant. Church really doesn't grow. The community really doesn't grow. But anytime the Christian church has been attacked over the last 2,000 years, she always flourishes. I mean, the Roman Empire learned this the hard way. They thought by killing Christians, they would get rid of Christianity. But for every one Christian they killed, they produced 10 more Christians. And so, isn't that the case with Charlie Kirk right now? Charlie Kirk was taken out. How many more Charlie Kirks have been birthed through that assassination? And so, yes, I think there will continue to be this rise in political violence, religious violence. That's a one-way street, by the way. It's not going to be attacking Muslims, it's going to be attacking Christians. And this rise in violence, though, I do believe it is historically the greatest opportunity for the church to flourish. And so, it's like the best of times and the worst of times at the exact same time. I think that's what we're entering into. There's going to be a tremendous move of God, of people returning to God, but there will be this increase in evil at the exact same time, and it'll be perplexing. It'll be like a paradox. And so my description would be what I foresee us entering into is literally the best of times and the worst of times at the exact same time.
Joe Biden was a Catholic, which he was as Catholic as I am a Muslim. And during his administration, they went after anyone who's protesting outside of Planned Parenthood. If you had one toe on the apron of the driveway of a Planned Parenthood, that was considered, what was it, the FACE Act, that it
Yes.
was a blocking access to reproductive health care. Again, more, commie jargon, gobbledygook, as Norm Macdonald would say. Um, so we were seeing a lot of that, and a lot of the religious persecution. They were having feds that were hanging out at traditional Catholic masses, because that's what they were trying to find, radicals. And I've had this question asked to me. I'm sure you've had it as well. Why do Christians put up with this? That if somebody attacks Jewish people, we're kind of seeing, as we record this podcast, there's a big rift on the right of more neoconservative Zionist Christians versus the Groyper, Nick Fuentes, and Candace Owens, Tucker Carlson types. And you're seeing a lot of that go back and forth as well. But whenever there's, South Park wants to do an episode with Mohammed, there's calls for a fatwa. Why do Christians put up with being attacked like this, verbally and even physically?
Part of our DNA, and it's the most interesting thing. Our Messiah, our Savior, was brutally attacked and viciously put to death. Yet he defeated evil with good. And so others respond evil with evil. And a part of the Christian DNA is literally we have the phrase, we turn the other cheek. Now, that's as individuals. A lot of people try to apply that to a society or a government. It is not the role of the government to turn the other cheek. The role of the government is to bring about justice, and justice is to punish evildoers. But the role as an individual, as a Christian, as Jackson Lahmeyer, a follower of Christ, I am called to turn the other cheek. I am to follow in the footsteps of my Savior and my Messiah. That doesn't mean I'm to be weak, doesn't mean I'm to be passive, but we overcome evil with good. And so why are we the only group that gets persecuted and there isn't riots, right? Whenever a Christian gets persecuted, do we burn down cities? And no, we do not.
No,
We pray.
we burned candles and vigils.
That's the diff. We're different. That's the bottom line. We are simply different than everybody else. That's what separates us. That's what marks us. Now, you don't apply this to, like I said, a government. We do not have a government that turns the other cheek. That is not what Jesus meant there. What he meant for is us as followers, as his individual followers. We do. And so that's why we're different than everybody else.
Before I let you go, Jackson, I know you have a heart out here. Talk to us about the Sheridan Church and your mission.
Yeah, so I pastor Sheridan Church here, Tulsa, Oklahoma. We have a campus in Oklahoma City, and God's doing great things here in Oklahoma. All of our sermons are online through YouTube and X, Facebook, Rumble, all the different platforms. And my latest book is out, Chasing After the Win. I see the tab there. People can click to get it. The great baseball player Darryl Strawberry wrote the foreword, and
I love Daryl. I had Daryl on my podcast
did you?
a couple of
Isn't
years
he
ago.
one of the greatest humans ever?
He was, and I believe his wife is sick right now, and he's been
Yes.
right by her side. And for a guy who, he snorted put everything up his nose, and it won a championship with the Mets back in the day, and the fact that he has turned his life around, and it's not. There's some guys who turn their lives around and they do it for show. No, he is
Sure.
the real deal, and I was
He's
very, very shocked by how skilled he is on scripture.
He comes and preaches for me every year, and he wrote the forward, which is his life story of how he hit rock bottom. And literally, the book is worth reading just to read the forward by Darryl Strawberry. That's like it's so powerful because of his turnaround. And so, man, I appreciate you having me on, and I love what you're doing. And anytime you want to have me back, I'd love to do it.
And one of these times, I'm gonna finally go back to Oklahoma. I only crossed through it one time, but I'll have to
We're
stop by.
flyover country, man.
Yeah, well, I'm in Ohio, so we're basically as the jet from JFK or Newark or something is just about to take off. You're flying right over us, and we're the brown and green squares that you see. You're more of the brown squares the when
Yes.
you're going into
Yes.
LAX. But hey, Jackson, I really appreciate this. Let's keep in touch, and good luck with the book and with the mission. And thank you once again for doing this podcast with me.
Absolutely, man. Keep crushing it.
And thank you for watching this. Thank you for listening to this on the Check Your Brain podcast. I'll be back with you next week with another free episode of the Check Your Brain podcast. I am Tony Mazur. Thank you. And talk to you next time. Bye now.